Hi everyone, it's me, your boy, Uncle Melty, the host of the Metal Meltdown. I'm still sick, in more ways than one, but because I still love you, and because I still have absolutely nothing better to do with my time, we're going to persevere, and I'm going to talk about this brand new full-length studio album, The Bestiary, from American epic fantasy heavy metal crew Castle Rat. Castle Rat is still a relatively new band, all things considered. They formed in 2019, but never released a debut full-length studio album until Into the Realm in 2024, literally just over a year ago. But in this small amount of time, Castle Rat have really made a name for themselves. They've become one of the most prominent, entertaining, and arguably unique forces in modern day heavy metal, in this kind of like old school retro heavy metal revival scene and movement, which is saying a lot because let's be real, there's no shortage of bands riding the coattails of everything that bands from the late 70s going into the 80s already did and made so famous and so popular. So famous and so popular, in fact, that it influenced this entire genre and culture. Like, for real, throw a rock in any direction and you're pretty much guaranteed to find an old school heavy metal band. There's tons of them, but how many of them are doing what Castle Rat is doing? How many of them have, like, characters and lore? How many of them are essentially doing what I would describe as turning an episode of He-Man into a heavy metal musical and providing WWE-style theatrics on top of that? How many? I'm genuinely asking you, how many? To my immediate knowledge, there's only one, and that band is Castle Rat. Saw them live a week and a half ago. One of the most batshit fucking things I've ever seen in my life. There was an ancient magic book that transcended time and space itself. There was a plague doctor character, like a freaky bisexual vampire looking ass character. Another guy that was covered in antlers and pelts and weird symbols, and the rat, the rat queen herself. Looking like Chapel Rowan dressed as Conan the Barbarian for Halloween. And then there's the Rat Reaperess, who to my knowledge doesn't contribute anything for like lyrics or music or anything. She's simply there for the performance aspect of Castle Rat. But she comes out on stage dressed up in full lingerie with like a rat skull mask and a giant scythe. And like, what the fuck is going on? That's all I could think the entire time I saw Castle Rat. What the fuck is going on? And they were fighting and summoning creatures, and at one point the Rat Queen died and was brought back to life with a magic potion, and people cheered as if John Cena had stepped into the fucking ring. It was amazing, it was spectacular, best 25, 30 bucks I ever spent, honest to fucking God. But there's one problem with Castle Rat. Those theatrics, everything that makes the live show so cool, only a fraction of that really translates to the albums. And as a result, the albums just aren't as exciting. Like, I liked Into the Realm, but to be honest, I kind of forgot about it shortly after. And I liked The Bestiary, but I don't know. We'll see. I mean, only time will tell if this remains in regular rotation for me, but the way I see it, I can either spend $30 on the vinyl for this album, or I can go see Castle Rat live for the same price. So, yeah. They're kind of like Gwar in that sense, at least for me. Like, I like Gwar, I respect Gwar. Seeing Gwar live is awesome. But like, I don't really care that much about the music. It is secondary to everything else about the band. And that is unfortunately very much the case here. I know it sounds unfair to be like, oh, well, it's not as good as the live performance, so therefore it's just not as good, period. I know that sounds unfair, but that's just kinda how it is. That's just kinda how I feel. Sorry / not sorry, whatever. But before you banish me to an eternity of damnation at the hands of the Rat Reaperess, which, if we're being honest, wouldn't be that bad. She got a little something going on. She kind of fine, I can't lie. But before you do that, let me make something clear. The Bestiary, in its own right and regard, if we were to divorce Castle Rat entirely from everything that makes them Castle Rat, as hard as that is, the Bestiary still stands as a pretty solid old-school heavy metal record. Almost no changes have really been made to Castle Rat's particular brand of metal. The only noticeable one that I can hear and see, mind you, I'm sick, so maybe I'm just, maybe I'm fucked. Maybe there's other stuff that I'm just not picking up on. But the only thing that I could really notice and see and hear was that the production, the mixing and mastering here, you know, I do feel like this is a more full-bodied album. I do feel like it's a little bit bigger. I do feel like the guitars are a little bit more full. But, like, you still have those fuzzy guitar tones, that same overall kind of, like, underground 80s epic adventurous metal production and presentation. Plenty of doomy, lumbering riffs and epic progressions and soaring guitars and kind of, like, ominous kind of vocal harmonies. Plenty of occult rock vibes all around as well. Like, I don't know if y'all remember Ides of Gemini, but this kind of reminds me of Ides of Gemini. As well as the heavier works from, like, Sabbath Assembly. I mean, Unicorn especially revels in, like, epic doom and occult rock vibes. It sounds like the aforementioned Ides of Gemini going on some kind of magical adventure. It has a very spooky, hypnotic, almost kind of meditative flow to it, with its, like, dreary vocal harmonies and plodding, pounding drums and lingering guitars building up to big, epic doom crescendos and outbursts. The track Sunsong initially does a pretty good job at following a similar kind of path to that of Unicorn, but it doesn't take long for things to get a little bit more grandiose and even crazy. Like, it is a more cinematic cut, it has more thunderous riffs and percussion all the way through, but as it progresses, as we get closer and closer to the end, more and more crazy, hectic, manic, frenzied drums and guitars and wailing sounds and effects are kind of piled on top of each other. I will say Crystal Cave caught me off guard too. I love the use of strings and acoustic guitars here, and it has this almost kind of old school prog rock kind of bombast and scale to it at times without going into super weird artsy territory. And you know, even interluding cuts like Wolf 2, Summoning Spell, which are heavy on like these very atmospheric kind of vocal displays and acoustic guitars, I think they're pretty solid. I think they add a lot of texture and mood and flavor to the album at times. Feels very Mirkur-esque. And like, fuck it. Even if songs like Serpent, Dragon, and Wolf 1 aren't literally the most hyper-original things I've ever heard in my entire life, they're still well-made and well-written. They're still entertaining with all of the doomy heavy metal guitar riffs and mayhem and like tense epic drums I could possibly want and expect from music of this style and variety. Reminds me big time of like the earliest material from The Sword. I do think that the actual opening to this album could be a lot stronger, a lot tighter. Like, Phoenix 1 does have some epic soaring guitars, but it kind of meanders on these guitars for quite some time before fading off to a quiet close and then jumping into the next song, the aforementioned Wolf 1. Had there been a stronger, more seamless connection between these two tracks, like if we had those same epic soaring guitars leading directly into the main riff of Wolf 1, then we'd be cooking. Then we'd be working with something here. I do also feel like some of the songs bleed together a little bit here and there, and honestly, the Castle Rat live show does a better job at telling the story of the Bestiary, and the story of the band really, than this album does. And that, I feel, is not unfair at all to say. That's a legit criticism, I feel. Like, I think I learned more about the Bestiary, this encyclopedia of magic creatures and what else have you, that transcends time and space, created by this universe's fucking Sorcerer Supreme, fucking Merlin or whatever the fuck. I feel like I learned more about the Bestiary and Castle Rat and everything about these guys and what they do. I feel like I learned more from the live show than I did from the album, which I think is a problem when the album is supposed to be very story heavy and it has all this lore and all these characters. And this kind of takes me back to what I was saying in the beginning of the video. There's a certain kind of magic and energy and charm to the Castle Rat live show. There are certain things that Castle Rat does live that makes them who they are that simply cannot be translated to a full-blown studio album. And as a result, a good chunk of what makes Castle Rat so special is lost. But once again, even if the Bestiary isn't as good as Castle Rat live, it's still a pretty good album. I'm feeling a 3.5 out of 5, a pretty firm, middle-of-the-road 3.5 out of 5 as well. It is a good album. I would have no issue recommending this to anybody who loves old-school, epic, heavy metal and doom metal. I'd have no issue recommending this to somebody who's maybe looking for a little bit of cringe and cheese and silliness and goofiness to go alongside their heavy metal listening experience. But most importantly, go see Castle Rat, because as good as the Bestiary is, it pales in comparison to the experience that is the Castle Rat live show. The stage is where this band reigns supreme. I don't really have much more to say, and I would love to take my medicine and also a nap. So, goodbye. 3.5 out of 5. It's a good album. Check it out. And that is it for the Metal Meltdown and blah, 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 blah. I don't care right now. I don't give a shit. Press the button to subscribe. Other videos here. Join us on Discord. Let me know what you thought. Or don't. Yell at me if you like. It don't bother me none. I'm going to... I want soup. I'm gonna make... Ooh, you know what? I got some chickpeas. I'm gonna make a curry chickpea soup. That'll be good. That'll be good for my brain, for my body, for my soul right now. That would heal me. Yeah. All right. Bye.